Hello and welcome to PC Journal. I'm Mark Warren. Today I'm on location to bring you an interview with Florida State Congressman Danny Burgess. As the political season really starts to heat up, I'm going to get Representative Burgess's thoughts on some pressing issues, including an effort to end the funding of Planned Parenthood within the state of Florida, as well as his experience working as a city councilman and mayor with the faith community. That's coming up on this edition of PC Journal. Welcome back to PC Journal. My name is Mark Warren, and as you can tell, we're on location today, and it's our great honor to have as our very first guest on PC Journal, Congressman from the state of Florida, Danny Burgess. Danny, welcome to PC Journal.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Man, I was so excited when you agreed to do this interview. We've been looking forward to doing this now for 2 months.
Yeah, we have. We've been trying to fit it in the schedules, and we made it work.
We did make it work, yes. We're just about ready for you to depart and take your next session of Congress up at Tallahassee.
Yep, it's about to be.
And so I appreciate so much you taking the opportunity to fit in this interview and before you take off to Tallahassee.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's an absolute honor to be able to be here and to be your first interviewee.
You and I got a chance to meet, and we've worked together here actually in this community in Zephyr Hills, Florida, for a number of years. Danny has been originally a city councilman. He was actually, if I understand correctly, the youngest city councilman ever elected to that position. Is that right?
It is. I was 18 years old at the time.
18 years old. And then he moved up to the sitting position of mayor of Zephyr Hills, Florida. Again, I think that was another first, isn't that right?
I believe I was the youngest mayor. I was 26.
26 years of age. Wow, that's incredible.
I'm already dating myself. Now I'm 29, so it feels like an eternity ago.
Well, Danny, it has been a really cool opportunity for you and I to work on a local level, and actually that's where I'd like our interview to begin. And so the first question I want to ask you kind of revolves around your efforts and your work both as a city councilman and as mayor in Zephyr Hills, Florida. And so my first question to you is this, is that in those capacities, what ways did you see the community of faith come alongside city government to meet the needs of that community?
I think that there's no finer example than through the Ministerial Association. I really was amazed by how well they work together, the city as well as the Ministerial Association. Another prime example, where all the pastors come together and put together amazing events, and I think that one of the finest is the Harvest Festival. The outreach that you do through that organization, it really is nice that there's one voice, collective voice between the different denominations and the different churches that are out there in our community, and they're all wonderful in their own respect and regard, and they do great work, but when we come together, we're stronger as one, and I think that's a real great testament to what you all have been able to accomplish, and I think that the city recognizes that and has really benefited from the work that you all have done for the city. Another great example is the National Day of Prayer. That is really special because I've had the opportunity to speak there for the past 3 years, I want to say, since I was the mayor. And I'm always so excited to be invited back to come and speak. More than anything, what I'm really excited about and what really takes me back every time is that that event is held within City Hall, which is something that maybe we take for granted, but need to remember that that doesn't happen everywhere. That dichotomy there, sometimes there's that literal separation of church and state that happens throughout our nation, but here in Zephyr Hills, we're very proud that that event in its traditions have been able to been held within the confines of City Hall.
Yeah. So let me ask, because you're right, we do kind of take that for granted in this particular community because there are an awful lot of communities where, if not because of a complaint, perhaps sometimes because of the fear of a complaint, that there has been this divergence between cities, county, state, and even federal governments and the homes in the community of faith that they have residing within them. And so let me just ask you this. What do you feel were the needs that the city, while you were mayor and as you were councilman, could have been better met, instead of by city government, by the house of faith and the community of faith within Zephyr Hills?
I will say this. I will say that there's no government. The government closest to the people is the best form of government, right? So local government to me is where the rubber meets the road and where we can meet the needs of our individual community, because you know your community, you know it's affecting your neighbor. You're not that far removed from the community because you are the community, you represent that community, and that's the beautiful part of a local government. However, I am a firm believer in limited government. I'm a firm believer that religious organizations, that nonprofits, they don't even have to be religious, but social organizations that we have, from adoption agencies to obviously charitable organizations, and a lot of those are religious and Christian in nature, that they do that job better than government ever could. They provide those services better than government ever could. So what I try to do as a state representative in Tallahassee, what I try to keep in the back of my mind is, how can we help empower these organizations to do their job and then get out of the way, because they truly are the best resources that we have here in this nation.
Now that you've moved to the state level and you're serving as a representative in the Florida House, are there some things that you take from your experience in Zephyr Hills in local government within that dynamic of city government working together with the community of faith that you feel could be transferable? And what are some things that you really felt that we could do better across our state?
No question. My experience in local government, I think, has helped hone my ability to be effective in Tallahassee. I really love that I'm bringing that local perspective to the table, because you've had an opportunity, again, and I believe that local government is the hardest form of elected office, because decisions you make directly impact your neighbor. When you go to the store, whether it's Walmart or Publix or anywhere, you know, you are accountable, and that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing, and that makes it very difficult, because you may have to make a decision that is for the benefit of the whole, but really impacts somebody that maybe you've known your entire life, or it's at the it may benefit. It may be for the greater good, but there may be some negative effects that come along the way, and maybe that impacts somebody that you care about. And so it makes those decisions very, very challenging sometimes. At the state level, it's not as far removed as it is from the national level, obviously, in Washington, D.C., but certainly there's that layer of being removed. And so having that local experience, I think, helps to keep that perspective. And there were several issues last year in my first session that I think I was able to utilize my knowledge in local government and help me make a better decision on some of the bills that were passed that ultimately I feel would have been very detrimental if they had ultimately passed the entire legislature and been signed into law by the governor. They would have been very detrimental to local governments and taxpayers.
I see. So what are some other big challenges that you face moving? Just yourself on a personal level. I want our audience to kind of get a perspective of who you are. And I mean, you know, we sit back and we think about our representatives, whether it be in the state level or in the federal level. And we oftentimes, I think, fail to see them as people struggling themselves, that you have your own challenges. And so I don't want to ask you to be really deeply personal here, but could you just kind of reflect to us on just, you know, the experience of moving to a state level office, and what are some of those challenges that you find that you face?
It's a whole new ball game, I'll tell you that much. And I appreciate that question, because I think one of the biggest challenges that I've faced at the state level personally so far is the stigma of a politician. And I understand where people are coming from. I get it. I really do. I've been there. But sometimes we forget that people that go into public service are people too. And for the overwhelming majority, we do that because we do want to make a difference. There's different ways to skin a cat, right?
Yeah.
So there are plenty of people who can disagree on issues, but at the end of the day, those are issues. At the end of the day, we're all striving to make the state of Florida better. I don't think there's anybody up there that's saying, I want to go to Tallahassee and I want to see how I can destroy our state.
Yeah.
Not one person has ever assumed public office or ran for public office seeking that goal, right? So we all want to make a difference. There's different ways of making that difference, and there's different ideas out there. So one of the biggest challenges for me is I care, I really, truly, and I think this is the local government side of me, as well as just the human nature. I really care about those that I represent. I care about my district. Living here my whole life, I've grown up in this district, and I know a lot of the people through public service and through my family, which makes what I do even more special. I wish every representative had the opportunity to serve an area that truly they've grown. Every part of the district is a place that you've had an experience in throughout your childhood or your life. And now you're raising your family in that same place, and that's a very special thing for me. So one of the hardest things to do is to convey to those who maybe don't know me, don't know my background, or just kind of associate that political stigma with myself, that I'm truly trying to do this for the right reasons, and that I am a person too. Just yesterday I had an email. We deal with very hot topics, and this was one of those hot topics, and I get a lot of emails, and I make sure to respond to every single one personally. It takes a lot of time, but that's something I'm really striving to do, to try, again, something I'm trying to do to try to break that barrier down. You get emails that say, I know this is just going to go to a staff member or an intern, you know, and the greatest thing I do is sit in front of my computer during session, get that email, and respond to it within minutes and say, actually, no, it's me. And the response you get back is amazing. It diffuses, it takes down that guard, that barrier, and it diffuses that, I don't know what I want to say, it diffuses that, what the word I'm looking for is animosity, or that
the distance that's there.
Right,
I mean,
distance.
Oftentimes I would assume, Danny, that you would have a lot of gatekeepers that stand between you and the people that you serve, just for expedience sake.
Right, and so somebody over this issue yesterday, was a very controversial one, we happened to disagree on it, and so I had sent them a response back, and they said, well, hey, you lost my vote forever in a day because of this stance. I disagree with you, and you know, if you were in the real world too, then perhaps you would understand where I'm coming from. And so I responded, and I said, as genuinely as I can through an email, I said, you know, I grew up here, I work here, because believe it or not, being a state legislator is actually considered a part-time job. It's full-time in nature, but you still have to have a full-time day job. So I'm a lawyer. So I practice law here, I work here, I grew up here, I went to school here, I played baseball here, I'm in the United States military, I'm in the reserves, I raised my 2 kids here with my wife. I'm in the real world too. We live in this same world. And I haven't received a response back from that gentleman, but I try very hard to try to make that connection and say, look, we can agree to disagree on an issue, but that doesn't mean that, you know, somebody that disagrees with you is in a whole other realm or another universe. They call us citizen legislators for a reason. I came from this community, and I'm bringing that perspective to Tallahassee. And so hopefully in time, it will take time, but hopefully in time, we'll be able to make that connection, build those bridges, and just have an open door. Because what I've realized more than anything is that Democrat, Republican, Independent, conservative, liberal, whatever you may be, a lot of people are just looking for somebody that they can trust, somebody that they don't necessarily agree with all the time, but they know that when they talk to them, they have an ear to bend, that I'm listening, that the door is open, and that maybe I'll land on another conclusion, but at least I'm trustworthy. At least I'm somebody that can be accessible. That's really what people want more than anything, and that's really been working for our office, because that's our #1 goal.
Yeah. When you go to Tallahassee and you represent this district, you are, as you've already said, you are a husband, you're a father, you're an attorney, you serve our nation's defense in the military. One of the other things that perhaps I think would be of great interest to our audience here at PC Journal is that you're also a person of faith. And so if I could, Danny, let me just ask you if you could comment on not necessarily all the particulars about your own faith, but how does you being a person of faith guide you in representing this district in the state of Florida?
It's who I am. There's no question. I'm not one of those individuals who goes into the voting booth and keeps my faith out of it. That's who I am as a person. You can't remove yourself from that. And if people try, they're lying to themselves. That's who you are. Be who you are. And that's what I strive to do in this capacity. When I run for office, when somebody runs for office in a representative democracy, you lay it out on the table. You say, this is what I believe, this is where I stand. And they either choose to vote for you or they don't. I'm a man of faith. I always have been, always will be. It guides me. It helps me make my decisions. I'm a very open-minded person. I promise on every issue, even if it is something that I disagree with, that I do my research, that I always make sure, maybe it's the lawyer in me, I always make sure to know both sides of the story, because I believe I'm not doing my job if I just close that door, regardless of what it is. But you better believe that my faith is going to help me make that decision, and never will I ever not take that into account. That's who I am. You elect me as such. And I don't think any politician or elected official should ever shy away from that.
Yeah. Well, we're here at Positively Christian, and we really are trying to take a mission of trying to educate believers and to empower believers to not be closeted Christians, but to actually live out their faith. I believe that's what you're doing, Danny. I believe you're living out your faith in a very public arena, in a venue. And so one of the things I'd like to kind of, as we wrap up our interview today, I'd like to talk to you about one of those issues that is a very charged issue. Even in our state of Florida. I know that just in the last couple of days on a federal level, that for the very first time, both houses of Congress up in Washington, D.C. came together and they passed legislation and sent it to the president. Now, more than likely, the president has threatened he's going to veto that. But part of that legislation that they are sending this week to the president is about defunding Planned Parenthood.
Right. For the first time in 5 decades.
Yes. It's an amazing place that we're at. There's a grassroots level among many people here in the state of Florida to appeal to the governor to do what some other states have done, to do what some other governors have done, most recently in Texas, for example, to go ahead on a state level and defund through acts of working through the state's Medicaid program, to defund any money from the state level going to Planned Parenthood. So if I could, let me ask you, number one, where do you stand on that issue? And then I would like to come back after that and just simply ask you, now from a state legislator's perspective, what do you think can or can't be done in regards to that issue?
I'm very pro-life. That issue defines me. I believe that with life stems every other opportunity that we have. Without life, we have nothing. And every life deserves a chance. And so I'm very pro-life from conception, and we have to protect life at its most vulnerable stages. I'm a new dad. I have 2 kids under 2. My wife and I are raising 2 children under 2, so we're in the middle of that chaos, but it's a beautiful, beautiful chaos.
Yes.
We wouldn't have it any other way. And so the first thing I remember, and I've always been pro-life, but becoming a father and seeing the ultrasound for the first time only reaffirms everything that you believe. Seeing the heartbeat, I think it was at 8 weeks, that young, you realize more than anything that little life is so dependent on you to survive. Yeah. And so that only reinforced those beliefs within me and my wife. And we just cherish our children, and we have to protect them at all costs. And it's our responsibility to do so as a nation. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's a reason why life started first. And I will say this, it's amazing, because I think a lot of times we see science as in religion in conflict, if you will, and I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but I think that there's that perception from time to time. But,
I think so.
But the beautiful thing is science is actually helping us in this battle, this battle for life. And with the advancement of science, the more and more people are realizing, who have been ardently pro-choice, they're saying, wow, I can't deny this. This is a living, breathing human being. And they're becoming pro-life. And it's amazing. It's amazing. And so I do believe we're winning this battle, and that we will ultimately win. It's going to take time still, but the efforts to defund Planned Parenthood are important. They're necessary, and I'm very proud of the House and the Senate for passing that legislation. And even if the president does veto it, I hope he signs it into law, but I think the writing is on the wall that he probably won't. We needed to send that message. A lot of people said, well, don't do it if you know that that's a foregone conclusion. No, absolutely not. You stand up there and you do your job and you fight for what you believe in. You're a co-equal chamber. You're a co-equal body of government, this bicameral, in the separation of powers that we have here, and so you do your job. Whether or not the Senate's going to pass it, you vote your conscience and you do what you got to do in the House, or vice versa. Whether or not the president's going to veto it, you still pass that legislation out and you send it to him and you make him veto that bill. You make him, because that's what we got to do. And that's what we have to do to stand in defense of life. And if we don't, who will?
That's right.
So I believe that it's of the utmost importance at the state level. When this issue broke out, my office and I, we actually began an initiative right away that asked, we drafted a letter and we asked for co-signers. And I'm proud to say that in about a week or so that we worked to do that, we were able to get 30 plus co-signers, legislators from the House, on that letter. And ultimately the House took that and actually submitted it to FDLE and asked them to perform a full-blown investigation. And the governor actually did that as well, and so FDLE did end up doing that. And I'm very proud of that, and that letter that ended up going out was very similar to what we had drafted, and we have it hanging on our wall because that was just a very important thing, and we're very proud to have been able to play some role in that. We could not have sat back and just let this happen. And you're right, while Planned Parenthood does not necessarily receive direct state funds, there's indirect funding. Mm-hmm. There is. And so we have to address that. We have to ensure that that money is not going to support the systematic killing of the unborn. Yeah. We do. It's horrendous. It's heinous. And it just blows my mind how people who disagree, even at the top echelon of Planned Parenthood, can call those who are appalled by this selling of baby parts for profit extremists. I truly am hard pressed as a human being to think of anything more extreme than dismembering an unborn child and selling it for profit. It just blows my mind.
Barbaric is the word I would use. Yes.
To say the least. So we're going to continue those efforts. We're going to continue to fight the good fight there, and we will win.
So are there any, as you get ready to step into a brand new session starting next week, are there any steps apart from what the governor may or may not do? I mean, so far he seems to be reticent on taking a step forward on that. Are there steps that both the House and the Senate up in Tallahassee can do to be proactive in those areas?
I believe there are, and I believe there will be, and I look forward to supporting the pieces of legislation. So early on in the session, so many things change. There's so many dynamics going on, but I do believe, and the indication that we've received is that there will be, and that we will be pushing those forward. So I'm very excited to be able to play whatever role I can in helping those along. Something else I was remiss not to mention this, but back when we were seeking co-signers for this letter, something that I realized was that this issue, what we're talking about, with the selling of unborn body parts, baby body parts for profit, it transcends the political nature of pro-choice, pro-life. I had a pro-choice individual that asked to co-sign. There was a pro-life Democrat that was on that letter. And so what I realized was this transcends politics. This is an issue of fundamental right and wrong. Yeah. And so we will continue to fight this good fight. And like I said, we will win.
Well, Danny, I got to tell you, I appreciate so much your time and your input. On a personal level, I appreciate you. And I appreciate what you've been doing, not only on the local level, as a local pastor, with a local mayor. We have had such wonderful opportunities together to serve in this community, and I'm so proud of the work that you're doing up there in Tallahassee. And I just want to wish you and your wife and your children the very, very best from PC Journal. And I would love to have an opportunity to come back and have you chat some more with our audience. Would that be possible, you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been an absolute honor to be your first interviewee. It means a lot to me and my family. And I ask that you please pray for us. We need the prayers, and we're going to go up there and fight the good fight. So please keep us in your prayers.
Thank you. This is Mark Warren for PC Journal on location God bless you, and we'll see you next time.